The moment I discovered my parents had stolen my future, I felt my entire world collapse. Standing in our kitchen, clutching a college rejection letter because my tuition payment bounced, I recalled my parents' tearful confession 2 months earlier. "We lost everything, honey, including your college fund." But that morning, I overheard them laughing with my brother Tyler about his fully funded startup using my money. The betrayal cut deep, but they had no idea it already moved my most valuable assets and set a plan in motion that would change everything. Growing up, I was always the responsible one in our family. While most of my friends were busy with social media and weekend parties, I was the straight-A student who joined every academic club and spent weekends volunteering at the local animal shelter. My parents, especially my father, constantly reminded me how proud they were of my achievements. "Jenny, you're going places," my dad would say, patting my shoulder as I showed him another perfect report card. "Your brother may have the charm, but you've got the brains that will secure your future." Tyler, my older brother by 2 years, was the family charmer. With his easy smile and natural charisma, he could talk his way out of almost any situation. His room was plastered with participation trophies rather than academic awards, and he scraped through high school with mostly C's and D's. Despite this, our parents rarely pushed him to try harder, seeming content with his mediocre performance. "Not everyone is cut out for academics," my mom would say when I questioned why Tyler never faced consequences for his poor grades. "Hess got other talents." Those other talents mainly involved convincing our parents to increase his allowance and extend his curfew. Meanwhile, I worked tirelessly toward my goal of becoming a lawyer. From 8th grade onward, I participated in mock trial competitions, debate clubs, and took every government and political science course available at my high school. Despite my parents' promise to fully fund my college education, I started working part-time jobs when I turned 16. First at the local library shelving books, then at a coffee shop near our house. Every paycheck went straight into my savings account, creating what I called my emergency fund. "You don't need to work so hard," my dad insisted. When I picked up a third job as a weekend tutor, "Your college fund is growing nicely. We've been investing since you were a baby." But something in me always felt the need for a safety net, a backup plan that was mine alone. Looking back, maybe some part of me sensed what was coming. The day my acceptance letter from Westlake University arrived was one of the happiest of my life. Located just 3 hours from our suburban home in Pennsylvania, Westlake had one of the best pre-law programs in the country. With an impressive record of graduates getting into top law schools, the thick envelope contained not just my acceptance but also an invitation to their honors program. My father took the letter from my hands, his eyes scanning the contents before looking up with genuine pride. "I always knew you could do it, Jen. This is what we've been saving for all these years." My mother pulled me into a tight hug. "We're going to have a special celebration dinner tonight. This deserves your favorite meal." That evening they went all out. Mom prepared her famous pot roast with garlic mashed potatoes and homemade rolls. Dad opened a bottle of expensive champagne, pouring a small glass for me despite being underage. "To Jenny," he toasted, raising his glass. "The future lawyer who's going to make us all proud." The evening felt perfect until halfway through dessert when my father's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, excused himself, and stepped onto the back porch. Through the glass door, I could see his expression change from relaxed to tense. His gestures became animated, and though I couldn't hear his words, his body language screamed stress. When he returned to the table, his smile seemed forced. I asked if everything was okay, and he waved off my concern. "Just work stuff, nothing for you to worry about. This is your night." I believed him because I wanted to, because it was easier than considering alternatives, because he was my father, and until then, I'd never had reason to doubt him. The remainder of my senior year passed in a blur of excitement and preparation. I bought Westlake merchandise, connected with my future roommate on social media, and mapped out my 4-year academic plan. My parents took me shopping for dorm essentials, seemingly sparing no expense on quality bedding, a new laptop, and storage solutions for my small dorm room. Then came the graduation party. Our backyard was transformed with string lights and tables covered in blue and silver decorations, Westlake's colors. Family, friends, and relatives gathered to celebrate, bringing cards filled with well wishes and small cash gifts for my college fund. As the party was winding down, Tyler clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. My brother, who had been attending community college part-time while working at the local electronics store, stood with an unusual air of confidence. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice carrying across our backyard. "I've decided to drop out of college to pursue my tech startup idea full-time." A surprised murmur rippled through the remaining guests. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, waiting for our parents' reaction. They had always emphasized the importance of completing education, especially to me. "What's your big idea?" asked Uncle Jack. Always the practical one. Tyler grinned. "It's an app that connects local businesses with influencers for micro-marketing campaigns. I've been developing it for months, and I've already got interest from several investors." I waited for my parents to express concern or at least ask practical questions about his plan. Instead, my father clapped Tyler on the shoulder. "We've always known Tyler has an entrepreneurial spirit," he announced proudly. "Sometimes the traditional path isn't right for everyone." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "We're so excited to see where this takes him." I sat stunned, my graduation cake suddenly tasteless in my mouth. The same parents who had pushed me through SAT prep courses, monitored my homework every night, and demanded perfect attendance were now celebrating my brother's decision to drop out of college. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was supposed to be my moment, my celebration. I wouldn't let it be overshadowed by Tyler's latest impulsive decision. Little did I know, this announcement was just the first warning sign of the betrayal to come. 3 months before I was scheduled to start at Westlake, my parents asked me to join them in the living room for a serious talk. The formal setting immediately set off alarm bells in my head. Family discussions usually happened around the dinner table or in passing through the kitchen. The living room, with its rarely used furniture, was reserved for holidays and serious matters. My father sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, my mother beside him clutching a tissue. Their expressions were grave, matching the heaviness that suddenly filled the air. "Jenny, there's something we need to tell you," my father began, his voice unnaturally flat. "I've been trying to find a way to say this for weeks, but there's no easy way." My mother reached for my hand. "Sweetheart, there's been a financial situation." My father cleared his throat. "My investment portfolio has collapsed. I took some risks that didn't pay off, and we've lost everything." "Everything," I repeated, the word barely audible. "The market turned against us," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "Our savings, our investments, your college fund, it's all gone." The room seemed to tilt around me. My ears filled with a strange rushing sound, and my chest tightened until breathing became difficult. The carefully constructed future I had been planning suddenly evaporated. "But what about Westlake?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. My mother's eyes welled with tears. "We can't afford the tuition, honey. Not now." "But you promised," I whispered, hating how childish the words sounded even as they left my mouth. "We've been planning this for years." My father ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. "I know, and I'm so sorry to let you down. But sometimes life throws curveballs we can't predict." "What am I supposed to do now?" My voice cracked as the reality began to sink in. They exchanged glances before my father spoke again. "We think community college might be the best option. You can work part-time, save money, and maybe transfer to a 4-year school later." The suggestion felt like a slap. After years of perfect grades, extracurricular activities, and careful planning, my backup plan was the same school Tyler had just dropped out of. "What about loans?" I asked desperately. "Scholarships. The FAFSA forms have already been submitted based on our previous income," my mother explained gently. "And most scholarship deadlines have passed. But we can look into options for next year." My mind raced through possibilities. "I have some savings," I offered, thinking of my emergency fund. "About $7,000 from my jobs." Again, that look between them. "That's very generous, Jenny," my father said. "But even with that, it wouldn't be enough for Westlake. And honestly, we might need that money just to get through the next few months until I can find a new investment opportunity." My stomach dropped. They wanted my savings too. "I could work more hours," I suggested, desperation creeping into my voice. "Maybe take a gap year and save up." My mother squeezed my hand. "We know how hard you've worked, sweetheart. This isn't fair to you. But we're a family, and we'll get through this together." I handed over my savings the next day, withdrawing the cash and giving it to my father. He accepted it with apparent reluctance, promising to pay me back as soon as things turned around. I watched him tuck the envelope into his desk drawer, a strange feeling settling in my gut. The following weeks brought visible changes to our household. My parents canceled their annual anniversary trip to the Poconos. My mother sold some of her jewelry. We stopped eating out and started clipping coupons for groceries. All signs pointed to a family in financial distress. I threw myself into finding solutions. My nights became marathons of scholarship searches and financial aid research. I printed applications until our home printer ran out of ink. I called Westlake's financial aid office daily, explaining my situation and begging for options. Meanwhile, I increased my hours at the coffee shop and took a second job waiting tables at a local restaurant. Between shifts, I applied for every scholarship I could find, no matter how small the award. My sleep dwindled to 4 or 5 hours a night as I tried to salvage my college plans. After 2 weeks of this new routine, I came home from a double shift at the restaurant to find workers in our basement. Curious and exhausted, I made my way downstairs to find contractors installing new lighting, electrical outlets, and what looked like expensive built-in desks along one wall. "What's going on?" I asked my mother when I found her in the kitchen. "Oh, we're converting the basement into a workspace for Tyler," she explained casually. "For his new business." I stared at her in disbelief. "We can't afford my tuition, but we can afford a basement renovation." Her expression hardened slightly. "Your father managed to secure a small business loan. It's different from personal finances. And this is an investment in Tyler's future. What about my future?" I asked, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. "Jenny, please understand. This isn't just about Tyler. If his business succeeds, it helps all of us. Sometimes we have to adapt to changing circumstances." I wanted to scream that my circumstances had changed because they changed them. Instead, I turned and walked up to my room, closing the door before allowing the tears to fall. Something wasn't adding up, but I was too exhausted and overwhelmed to piece it together. Little did I know that the basement renovation was just the tip of a massive iceberg of betrayal that would soon be revealed. As July turned to August, my life became an exhausting cycle of work and desperate scrambling to secure my education. I picked up additional shifts at the restaurant, sometimes working from the breakfast rush through dinner service. My manager, noticing my determination, gave me the most lucrative sections with the highest potential tips. "College fund?" he asked one night as I counted out my tips. I nodded, too tired for details. "Good for you," he said. "Education's the one thing nobody can take from you." His words echoed in my mind as I drove home that night, my hands smelling of restaurant disinfectant and food despite multiple washes. If only he knew how literally someone was trying to take my education away. At home, the atmosphere had grown increasingly tense. My parents would abruptly end conversations when I entered rooms. Twice, I caught them in heated whispers in the kitchen, only for them to plaster on smiles when they noticed me. One afternoon, while collecting the mail, I discovered several envelopes from various banks addressed to my parents. The corner of one envelope had torn, revealing a loan rejection letter inside. I stared at the visible words. "We regret to inform you that your application for a personal loan has been denied due to..." The rest was hidden, but it confirmed they were still trying to borrow money. Whether for basic expenses or something else, I couldn't tell. I placed the mail on the counter without mentioning my discovery. Meanwhile, preparations for Westlake continued despite the financial uncertainty. I received my dorm assignment and information about freshman orientation. Using the tips I'd earned, I paid the $500 housing deposit, clinging to hope that somehow I'd find a way to attend. "Well, figure something out," my father assured me when I showed him the orientation schedule. "I've got some promising leads on new investments." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Then, 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for college, the final blow came. I opened the mailbox to find an official letter from Westlake University addressed to me. Inside was a notice that my tuition payment had bounced, along with a warning that my enrollment would be canceled if payment wasn't received within 10 days. My hands trembled as I read the letter 3 times, trying to make sense of it. My parents had told me they couldn't afford my tuition. How could a payment have bounced if they never made one? I rushed inside and called Westlake's financial aid office, my heart pounding as I was transferred from department to department. Finally, a sympathetic administrator pulled up my account. "Yes, We received an electronic payment for your first semester tuition, she confirmed, but the bank returned it due to insufficient funds 3 days ago. Can you tell me where the payment came from? I asked, my voice barely steady. It appears to be from a joint account under the names of David and Linda Anderson, she replied. My parents' names. And what about my FAFSA forms? I asked. My parents said they submitted them. A pause then. I'm not seeing any FAFSA information in your file. No application for federal aid has been linked to your account. The floor seemed to drop from beneath me. My parents had lied. They hadn't submitted the financial aid forms they promised to complete, and they had attempted to pay my tuition from an account they knew had insufficient funds. But why? That evening, I confronted them at the dinner table, placing the Westlake letter between the salad bowl and breadbasket. Can someone explain this to me? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. My parents exchanged glances. My father picked up the letter, scanning it with a frown that looked rehearsed. They must have made a mistake, he said finally. We never submitted a payment because we told you we couldn't afford it. The financial aid office says it came from your joint account, I countered. And they have no record of any FAFSA submission, which you told me you completed months ago. My mother reached for my hand, her eyes wide with practiced concern. Jenny, sweetheart, I don't know what's happening, but there must be some confusion. Or someone's lying, I said flatly. My father's expression hardened. Watch your tone, young lady. We're doing the best we can during a difficult time. Then explain the basement renovation for Tyler's business while I'm working double shifts to save for community college, I challenged. That's different, my father insisted. That's a business investment with potential returns. College is just an expense. The words hung in the air between us. Just an expense. My education, my future, my dreams, reduced to an unprofitable expense. I pushed back from the table and left without another word, too angry and hurt to continue the conversation. In my room, I lay awake most of the night, replaying every interaction over the past few months, trying to spot the moment when my parents' support had transformed into betrayal. Early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen, I came downstairs for a glass of water. Voices from the kitchen stopped me in my tracks. My parents and Tyler were having an early breakfast together, something unusual for our household. The equipment should arrive next week, my father was saying, his voice animated with enthusiasm I hadn't heard in months. The supplier gave us a good deal. This is going to revolutionize how small businesses handle their local marketing, Tyler replied. I still can't believe you guys believed in me enough to fully fund this. My mother's laugh sounded carefree. Well, it's not like the money was doing anything else important. Using Jenny's unused tuition money was brilliant, Tyler continued, causing my blood to run cold. Since she's not really college material anyway. My father chuckled. She's smart enough, but law school? Come on. Shed burnout in a year. This way, the family money stays in the family, and we all benefit from your success, instead of watching her struggle through a degree she'll probably never use, my mother added. I stood frozen in the hallway, their words hitting me like physical blows. Not college material? Family money? They hadn't lost anything. They had deliberately redirected my college fund to Tyler's business venture, then lied to my face about it. I backed away silently, careful not to make a sound as I returned to my room. Once inside, I slid to the floor, my back against the door, and covered my mouth to muffle the sobs that threatened to escape. The betrayal was complete. My own parents had stolen my future because they didn't believe I deserved it. In that moment, something inside me hardened. The perfect daughter, the people pleaser, the rule follower they had raised, died in that hallway. In her place rose someone new, someone determined to reclaim what was rightfully hers, no matter what it took. I allowed myself exactly 1 hour to fall apart. I cried until my eyes burned and my throat ached, letting out 18 years of trying to be perfect for parents who had never truly valued me. Then I washed my face with cold water, took 3 deep breaths, and began to plan. First, I called my best friend Amanda. We'd been inseparable since 7th grade when we bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and dystopian novels. Her parents had divorced 3 years ago, leaving her with a deep understanding of family betrayal. Can I stay with you for a while? I asked, not yet ready to explain everything. Of course, she replied without hesitation. Mom's on a business trip for the next 2 weeks, so you'd actually be doing me a favor. When are you coming? Tonight, if that works. And Amanda? Please don't tell anyone yet. My next call was harder. Aunt Susan was my mother's younger sister, and they had a complicated relationship marked by long periods of not speaking, but I needed information only she could provide. Jenny? This is unexpected, she answered, surprise evident in her voice. Aunt Susan, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be honest with me. She hesitated. Okay. Has my dad ever managed Mom's finances or had access to her inheritance from Grandpa Joe? Another pause. Longer this time. Jenny, what's going on? Please, Aunt Susan, it's important, she sighed. No. Linda has always maintained separate accounts for her inheritance. Your father doesn't have access. Your grandfather made sure of that with an ironclad trust. Why are you asking? The confirmation made my stomach clench. Dad claims he lost everything in bad investments, including my college fund. That's impossible, Aunt Susan said firmly. Your college fund was set up through your mother's trust. It's completely separate from your father's investments. After thanking her and promising to explain more later, I hung up and stared at the ceiling, processing this new information. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. Both my parents were active participants in this scheme. I spent the next hour researching on my laptop. Through social media and business registration searches, I discovered my parents had set up a shell company called Anderson Innovations 3 months earlier, listing Tyler as the CEO but with my parents as controlling shareholders. The business address matched our home. My college fund had likely been transferred there, disguised as a business investment. It was fraud, plain and simple. They had stolen from me, their own daughter, to finance my brother's half-baked business idea. That afternoon, I made an appointment with a financial aid counselor at Westlake, explaining that I needed to discuss a complicated family financial situation. The counselor, a woman named Miss Reynolds, agreed to meet me the following day. Before leaving, I needed one more piece of advice. I drove to my old high school and found Mr. Harrington, my debate coach, in his classroom preparing for the new school year. Jenny, shouldn't you be packing for Westlake? He greeted me warmly. When I explained the situation, his expression darkened. That's more than just disappointing parenting, Jenny. What they're doing could be illegal. What should I do? I asked, desperate for guidance from someone I trusted. Document everything, he advised. Conversations, financial records, anything you can legally access. And Jenny? Whatever you're planning, be careful. Family betrayal is particularly painful, and it can cloud judgment. Back at home, I acted normally at dinner, smiling and asking about everyone's day as if my world hadn't just imploded. After helping with dishes, I retreated to my room and began methodical documentation. I photographed the Westlake letter about the bounced payment. I recorded the date and time of the conversation I'd overheard, writing down quotes while they were fresh in my mind. I took screenshots of the business registration information ID found online. The next morning, while everyone was out, I checked my father's home office. His computer was unlocked, a careless mistake that worked in my favor. I found emails between my parents discussing the transfer of funds from JA College account to Anderson Innovations Capital Fund. I photographed these with my phone, along with bank statements showing the transfers. My meeting with Miss Reynolds at Westlake was both helpful and disheartening. She listened to my situation with genuine concern. Unfortunately, without your parents' cooperation, your options are limited, she explained. As a dependent student, financial aid is calculated based on your parents' income and assets. What if I apply as an independent student? I asked. She shook her head. That's very difficult. You'd need to document that you're legally emancipated, homeless, at risk of homelessness, or that your parents have abandoned you. I nodded, adding this information to my growing mental checklist. Back at home, I continued my evidence gathering while planning my exit. I packed essentials into my school backpack, not wanting to alert my parents with obvious suitcases. Then came the most shocking discovery of all. While searching for my birth certificate in my parents' bedroom, I found credit card statements in my name, from accounts I had never opened. 3 different cards, all maxed out, with thousands in charges for electronics, furniture, and office equipment that had likely furnished Tyler's basement workspace. They had not only stolen my college fund but had committed identity theft, opening credit cards in my name, and destroying my credit score before I'd even had a chance to build it. This explained why my own applications for student loans had been rejected despite my perfect academic record. I photographed these statements as well, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. This crossed every line, destroyed every shred of trust I might have salvaged. There was no going back now. That night, I moved my few valuable possessions to Amanda's house while my parents were at their weekly dinner with friends. I left a brief note. "I know what you did. I'm safe, but don't try to contact me." As Amanda and I drove away from the neighborhood I'd grown up in, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The hardest part wasn't leaving or even discovering their betrayal. It was accepting that the parents I thought I had, the ones who had encouraged my dreams and promised to support me, had never really existed at all. Now it was time to reclaim my future, one strategic step at a time. Living with Amanda felt like existing in a parallel universe. Her mother's modern apartment was nothing like my traditional family home, with its minimalist furniture and artwork from her travels across Asia and South America. There were no family photos on the walls, no childhood height markers on door frames. It was both disorienting and liberating. Amanda gave me her mother's permission to stay as long as needed. "Mom says to tell you mi casa es su casa," she informed me after a phone call with her mother. "And that, whatever your parents did, they're the ones who should be ashamed, not you." I settled into a routine quickly, working morning shifts at the coffee shop near Amanda's apartment, evenings at a new restaurant job I'd secured, and using every spare minute to execute my plan. The first step was financial damage control. I visited a local legal aid clinic that offered free consultations to people under 21. The waiting room was crowded with teenagers and young adults, many looking as lost and overwhelmed as I felt. After a 2-hour wait, I met with a tired-looking attorney named Gabriela Martinez. "Identity theft is unfortunately common," she explained after reviewing the credit card statements I'd brought. "But when it's perpetrated by parents against their children, it gets complicated." "Complicated how?" I asked. "Emotionally and legally. Are you prepared to file a police report against your parents? Because that's the first step to clearing fraudulent accounts from your credit history." The question hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything, some part of me had been hoping for a solution that didn't involve criminal charges against my own family. But that hesitation lasted only a moment. "Yes," I answered firmly. "I need to protect my future." "Miss," Martinez helped me draft a detailed statement and directed me to the nearest police precinct. Walking into that police station was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. The officer who took my report, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, listened without judgment. "You're doing the right thing," she assured me when I finished. "I've seen too many young people's lives derailed by family members who abuse their trust. The detective assigned to your case will contact you within 48 hours. Next came the confrontation I'd been avoiding. I drafted a careful email to my parents, attaching scanned copies of some of my evidence. The message was clear but controlled. "I have documented evidence of the transfer of my college fund to Anderson Innovations, as well as the credit cards fraudulently opened in my name. I am giving you one opportunity to make this right. Return my college fund, pay off and close all fraudulent accounts, and provide a written statement acknowledging what you've done. If I don't receive confirmation within 72 hours, I will pursue this matter through all available legal channels." Their response came 12 hours later, not with remorse but with threats. "Jenny, we're concerned about your mental health and the wild accusations you're making. This behavior is alarming and completely unlike you. We've spoken with Dr. Patterson, my childhood pediatrician, about getting you an emergency psychiatric evaluation. Whatever you think you've discovered is a misunderstanding. Come home so we can sort this out as a family." I forwarded their response to Miss Martinez, who confirmed it was a common tactic among those caught in financial fraud, especially family members. "They're trying to discredit you by suggesting you're mentally unstable," she explained. "Document this response as well." With the police report filed, I took my documentation to Westlake's financial aid office and applied for a dependency override, requesting independent student status based on parental fraud and abandonment. Miss Reynolds helped me complete the paperwork but warned me the process could take weeks or even months. "The committee meets monthly," she explained, "and they require substantial documentation. My enrollment will be canceled before then, I pointed out, the reality of my situation sinking in. We can put your admission on hold for 1 semester, she offered. It's not ideal, but it would give you time to resolve these issues without losing your place entirely. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. One small victory in what was becoming an increasingly complex battle. Days passed in a blur of work shifts, legal consultations, and anxiety-filled nights. My phone filled with voicemails from family members I hadn't spoken to in years, all suddenly concerned about my mental state and reckless accusations. My parents were clearly working their connections, trying to pressure me into dropping the matter. Then came the cease and desist letter from their attorney, claiming my defamatory statements were causing them emotional distress and reputational damage. I forwarded it to Miss Martinez, who advised me not to respond but to continue documenting everything. They're scrambling, she noted. This is actually a good sign. They wouldn't be this worried if they didn't know you had solid evidence. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, Tyler showed up at the coffee shop during my shift. Seeing him waiting by the counter sent a surge of anger through me so intense I nearly dropped the drink I was preparing. 5 minutes, he said before I could throw him out. Please, Jenny. It's not what you think. Against my better judgment, I agreed to talk during my break. We sat at a corner table, as far from other customers as possible. Mom and Dad have been lying to you, he began, looking genuinely distressed. No kidding, I replied coldly. He shook his head. Not just about your college fund, about everything. The fully funded startup they promised me? It comes with strings attached. They own 70% of the company. Every decision requires their approval, and the repayment terms are impossible. 14% interest compounded monthly. I stared at him, trying to process this new information. So they're screwing you too. Different method, same result, he confirmed. They're using my name and ideas to create a business they control completely. I'm just the front man. Why are you telling me this? Because I found your note, and when I confronted them, they showed their true colors. He pushed up his sleeve, revealing a bruise on his forearm. Dad did this when I said I was going to find you. Said I was betraying the family just like you. The sight of the bruise triggered memories I'd long suppressed, of harsh punishments disguised as discipline, of walking on eggshells to avoid my father's anger. Tyler and I had coped differently, me through perfect obedience, him through charm and deflection, but we'd both been manipulated our entire lives. I want to help you expose them, Tyler said. I have access to documents you don't, and I'm willing to testify about what they've done. I studied my brother's face, looking for signs of deception. The manipulative charm had perfected over the years. Instead, I saw fear, regret, and a determination that matched my own. Okay, I said finally. But we do this my way. No shortcuts, no games, no backing out when it gets tough. He nodded solemnly. I promise. It's time we both got free. As Tyler left the coffee shop, I felt the first flicker of hope in weeks. I was no longer fighting this battle alone, and with Tyler's insider access, we might finally have enough evidence to not just clear my name, but to hold our parents accountable for years of manipulation and abuse. The pieces were falling into place. Now it was time for the final confrontation. Over the next week, Tyler and I worked methodically to compile our evidence. We met in public places, away from prying eyes or potential family connections. The local library became our unofficial headquarters, with its free Wi-Fi and private study rooms. Tyler brought company registration documents showing our parents as majority shareholders, emails outlining their plan to use my college fund as startup capital, and recorded phone conversations where they discussed the fraudulent credit cards. I didn't know they'd open cards in your name, he admitted, looking genuinely disturbed as we reviewed the statements. That crosses a line even I didn't think they'd cross. They did it to hide the purchases for your office equipment, I explained. If they'd used their own cards, there would be a paper trail connecting them to the fraud. Together, we organized everything chronologically, creating a timeline that showed the calculated nature of their actions. This wasn't a desperate decision made in financial crisis. It was a deliberate scheme months in the planning. With our evidence compiled, we contacted the district attorney's office. The initial interview was intimidating. conducted in a sparse room with uncomfortable chairs and fluorescent lighting that highlighted every worried expression. The assistant district attorney, a serious woman named Sarah Blackwell, reviewed our documentation with clinical detachment. "This is substantial," she acknowledged finally, "particularly the identity theft aspect. The misappropriation of the college fund is more complicated legally, but these fraudulent credit accounts are straightforward criminal activity." "Will you pursue charges?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Based on what you've provided, yes. But understand, this process can take months, and it will permanently affect your relationship with your parents." Tyler and I exchanged glances. "That relationship is already destroyed," he said quietly. "They'll likely face financial penalties and possibly probation," she continued. "Jail time is less common in family fraud cases unless there's a pattern of similar behavior." As we left the district attorney's office, a strange mix of relief and grief washed over me. There was no going back now. The family I grew up with, however flawed and manipulative, was effectively gone. Meanwhile, I continued working with Westlake's financial aid office. Miss Reynolds had become my advocate, helping navigate the bureaucratic maze of financial aid appeals and dependency overrides. "The committee was impressed with your documentation," she told me during one of our weekly check-ins. "They've agreed to review your case at their next meeting rather than waiting for the normal schedule." It was another small victory, but the start of the fall semester was rapidly approaching, and my enrollment remained in limbo. The next blow came when my aunt called to tell me my parents were spreading rumors throughout the extended family. According to them, I was suffering from mental health issues, had become involved with a radical anti-family group, and was being manipulated by unscrupulous lawyers. "I know it's not true," Aunt Susan assured me, "but they're convincing people who don't know you well. Your grandmother is beside herself with worry." Despite my efforts to focus on the legal and financial aspects of my situation, the emotional toll was mounting. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and found myself jumping at unexpected sounds. Amanda noticed, her concern obvious as she watched me pick at my food during dinner. "Maybe you should talk to someone professional," she suggested gently. "This is a lot to handle on your own." "I'm not on my own," I reminded her. "I have you and Tyler. You know what I mean. Someone trained to help with trauma, because that's what this is, Jenny. Trauma." The word hit home. I had been so focused on practical solutions that I hadn't allowed myself to fully process the emotional impact of my parents' betrayal. The following day, I received an email from a mediator, requesting my presence at a meeting with my parents to resolve family differences amicably. After consulting with Miss Martinez, I agreed on the condition that Tyler also attend and that my legal advocate could be present. The mediation was scheduled for a week later at a neutral office downtown. I spent the days leading up to it preparing mentally, rehearsing what I would say, and steeling myself against the manipulation tactics I knew my parents would employ. The day of the meeting arrived with an unseasonable thunderstorm that matched my turbulent emotions. Tyler met me outside the building, his usually confident demeanor subdued. "Ready?" he asked, offering an umbrella as rain poured around us. "As ill ever be," I replied. Inside, the mediator, a calm woman in her 50s, introduced herself and outlined the ground rules. My parents sat across the table, looking simultaneously angry and smug. My father wore his court appearance suit, my mother a conservative dress that screamed respectable parent. They had come prepared to play their roles. "Before we begin," the mediator said, "I want to emphasize that this is a voluntary process. Everyone is here of their own free will to find a resolution." My father nodded solemnly. "We just want our daughter to come home and get the help she needs." And so it began. For 2 hours, they denied everything, despite the documents spread across the table. They claimed the business was always meant to benefit the whole family. They insisted the credit cards were opened with my permission as a way to help build my credit history. They suggested my accusations stemmed from jealousy of Tyler's success. Through it all, I remained calm, responding with facts rather than emotions, presenting evidence rather than accusations. Tyler backed me at every turn, confirming dates, conversations, and events that our parents tried to reframe or deny. The turning point came when I produced the emails discussing the transfer of my college fund. My father's face reddened as the mediator read them aloud. "These could be fabricated," he blustered. "Jenny has always been good with computers." "They came from your account, Dad," Tyler pointed out. I watched you write the one about using the tuition money for better investments. Something in my father seemed to crack. His carefully constructed facade of concerned parenthood slipped, revealing the controlling, angry man beneath. You ungrateful brats, he hissed, his voice low but intense. After everything we've done for you, do you have any idea the sacrifices we've made? David, my mother warned, placing a hand on his arm. But he was beyond caution now. You think you deserve a fancy college education? What for? So you can come back with some useless degree and lecture us about how smart you are. At least Tyler's business has potential. At least he might actually succeed at something. The mediator tried to intervene, to redirect the conversation back to the financial issues at hand, but my father was on a roll. You were never going to make it at Westlake anyway, he continued, glaring at me. We did you a favor. Better to learn now that you're nothing special than waste 4 years pretending to be something you're not. In that moment, with my father's true feelings laid bare, my mother finally broke her supporting silence. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she admitted quietly. The plan was to gradually redirect the funds, tell Jenny the market had affected her college account. Not this mess. My father turned his glare on her. Shut up, Linda, don't say another word. But something had shifted. My mother straightened in her chair, meeting his gaze steadily. No, David. I'm tired of the lies, tired of pretending. She turned to me, her expression a complex mix of regret and defiance. We never believed in your law school dreams, Jenny. It seemed like a waste of money when Tyler had this business opportunity that could benefit all of us. We thought you'd eventually understand that it was for the greater good of the family. By stealing my future? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. By destroying my credit before I even had a chance to build it. The credit cards were David's idea, she said quickly. I told him it was going too far. But you went along with it, Tyler pointed out. Just like you went along with making me the front for your business scheme. It wasn't like that, my mother insisted. We were trying to help both of you find your paths. By choosing those paths for us, I said. By deciding what we deserved and what we didn't. The mediator tried again to regain control of the session, but it was too late. The carefully orchestrated meeting had devolved into the raw, ugly truth of my parents' betrayal. No amount of professional intervention could put that genie back in the bottle. As the session wrapped up with no resolution in sight, I gathered my documents and stood to leave. My father's hand shot out, gripping my wrist with bruising force. This isn't over, he warned, his voice low. You have no idea who you're messing with. I looked down at his hand, then back at his face. Actually, I do. For the first time in my life, I see you both clearly. I gently removed his hand and turned to the mediator. Thank you for your time, but I don't think further mediation will be productive. I'll be pursuing this through legal channels. As Tyler and I walked toward the door, I pressed the stop button on the recording device in my pocket. Throughout the entire meeting, I had been wearing a wire, with police officers waiting in the next room, listening to every word. It had been Miss Martinez's suggestion, approved by the district attorney's office as part of their investigation. Miss Anderson. One of the officers stepped forward as we exited. Did you get what you needed? I nodded, handing over the recording device. Every word. My parents emerged from the mediation room just in time to see the officers identify themselves and inform them they were being taken in for questioning regarding charges of fraud and identity theft. The shocked disbelief on their faces as they were escorted from the building was a moment I knew I would never forget. It wasn't satisfaction I felt watching them leave, or even vindication. It was something quieter and more profound. The relief of finally being free from the weight of trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it unconditionally. Tyler squeezed my shoulder as we watched them go. What now? Now, I replied. We rebuild. The weeks following my parents' arrest unfolded like scenes from someone else's life. Their mugshots appeared briefly in the local paper's crime section. Friends from high school texted awkward messages of support or uncomfortable questions. Extended family members chose sides, some rallying around my parents with claims of mental illness and manipulation. Others reaching out to offer me and Tyler support we never knew was available. Through it all, I maintained my focus on the future I was determined to reclaim. The criminal case against my parents proceeded slowly through the justice system, with preliminary hearings and procedural motions that required my periodic presence. but not my constant attention. Miss Reynolds from Westlake called with unexpected news 2 weeks after the arrest. "The committee has reviewed your case," she began, her voice giving away nothing. "They've reached a decision regarding your application for independent student status." I held my breath, bracing for another setback. "They've approved it," she continued. "And in light of your extraordinary circumstances, the university is offering you a special circumstances scholarship covering 75% of your tuition for the first year, with potential renewal based on academic performance." The words took a moment to sink in. "I can attend Westlake?" I asked, needing the confirmation. "Yes, the spring semester starts in January. Your place in the honors program is still secured, and will help you catch up on the courses you missed this fall." After thanking her profusely, I sat in Amanda's living room, staring at the wall as happy tears streamed down my face. This wasn't just financial assistance, it was validation. Strangers on a scholarship committee had looked at my situation and deemed me worthy of investment, something my own parents had been unwilling to do. The criminal case against my parents resulted in a plea deal, restitution for all fraudulent charges, repayment of my college fund with interest, 2 years of probation, and mandatory financial counseling. The identity theft charges could have resulted in jail time, but as first-time offenders, they were granted leniency, something I didn't oppose. Justice for me wasn't about punishment but about rectifying the wrong that had been done. Tyler and I worked to repair our relationship in the aftermath. Years of being pitted against each other by our parents had created rifts we hadn't even recognized. We met weekly for coffee, sometimes talking for hours about our childhood, comparing notes on the manipulation tactics Wed each experienced, recognizing patterns Wed been too close to see. They always made everything a competition. Tyler reflected during one of these sessions, "Your grades versus my charm, your responsibility versus my creativity," always comparing, never just letting us be who we were. And we played right into it, I added. "I resented you for getting away with things I couldn't, and you resented me for being the perfect one they used as a measuring stick." He nodded. Perfect dysfunctional family dynamics. With the legal settlement, Tyler and I both received funds to pursue our respective paths. He decided to restart his business idea, but legitimately this time, with proper funding and full control. I helped him develop a business plan that was actually viable, and he helped me navigate the complicated process of credit repair following the identity theft. As the January start date for Westlake approached, I found myself facing an unexpected challenge. Fear. After fighting so hard to reclaim my spot, I was terrified of failing, of proving my parents right about my capabilities. What if I can't handle it? I confessed to Amanda one evening. "What if I'm not cut out for this after all?" "That's not you talking," she replied firmly. "That's the voice they put in your head. The same voice that made you think you had to be perfect to be loved." She was right, of course. The fear wasn't about my abilities but about the conditional love I'd been raised with. The belief that my worth was tied to my achievements. I started working with a therapist specializing in family trauma. Something I'd resisted initially but now recognized as necessary. Dr. Williams helped me untangle the complex web of emotions surrounding my parents' betrayal. The anger, grief, relief, and lingering desire for approval that still occasionally surfaced despite everything. Healing isn't linear, she reminded me during one particularly difficult session. And it doesn't mean you stop feeling the pain. It means you build your life around and beyond it. January arrived with fresh snow and new beginnings. Moving into my dorm room at Westlake felt surreal after the months of uncertainty and struggle. My roommate, Alicia, was a transfer student from California with a sunny personality and enough tact not to ask too many questions about why I was starting mid-year. The academic challenge was exactly what I needed. My classes demanded full attention, leaving little time for dwelling on the past. I threw myself into my studies, finding genuine joy in the intellectual stimulation and the community of similarly motivated students. By March, I had established myself as a top performer in my classes, joined the mock trial team, and started a part-time job at the campus legal aid clinic. The experience of navigating my own legal challenges had given me insights that proved valuable in helping other students with housing disputes and financial issues. One evening, while researching for a paper in the library, I noticed another student looking frustrated and overwhelmed at a nearby table. She was surrounded by financial aid forms and appeared close to tears. On impulse, I approached her. Financial aid nightmare? I asked gently. She looked up, surprised. How did you know? I recognized the forms and the expression. Been there myself. Over the next hour, I helped her navigate the complicated application process, explaining terms and requirements that the official instructions left unclear. By the time we finished, her relief was palpable. You literally saved me, she said gratefully. I was about to give up. The system is designed to be confusing, I replied. But once you understand it, it's manageable. That interaction sparked an idea. Within weeks, I'd created a student advocacy group focused on helping peers navigate financial aid, identify scholarship opportunities, and understand their rights regarding student loans. The Financial Empowerment Network, or FEN, quickly grew from informal advising sessions to structured workshops with guest speakers from the financial aid office and local banks. Tyler, whose business was slowly gaining legitimate traction, offered to build us a website and app for scheduling consultations. Our shared experience had transformed into a joint mission to help others avoid similar pitfalls. In April, my parents reached out through their lawyer, requesting a meeting. After consultation with my therapist and careful consideration, I declined. The legal matters were settled, and I wasn't ready for an emotional reconciliation that might never be possible. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt, and I was focusing on constructing new ones instead. As my first semester at Westlake drew to a close, I received an unexpected email from the Dean of Students. My advocacy work with FEN had caught the administration's attention, and they were offering me a position as a peer financial counselor for the upcoming academic year, with a stipend that would further reduce my educational costs. Sitting in my dorm room, reading that email, I reflected on the tumultuous journey of the past year. From the devastating discovery of my parents' betrayal to creating a new path forward, I had transformed from a people-pleaser desperate for approval into someone who defined success on her own terms. The most valuable lesson wasn't about finance or legal processes, though those skills had proven essential. It was about self-worth and resilience, about recognizing that sometimes the people who should support you the most are the ones who hold you back, and that true growth often begins when you stop seeking validation from those unwilling or unable to give it. Tyler and I continued building our relationship, free from the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered. That summer, we launched a small side business together, offering financial literacy workshops for high school students preparing for college. Our different strengths complemented each other perfectly, his charismatic presentation style balancing my detailed knowledge of financial systems. We make a good team, he remarked after a particularly successful workshop. Who would have thought? Not our parents, that's for sure. I replied with a smile that held no bitterness, only acknowledgement of a truth we'd both accepted. As I prepared for my sophomore year, I received a letter from a first-year student who had attended one of our workshops. She described how our advice had helped her secure scholarships that made her education possible and how she hoped to join FEN as a volunteer in the fall. You changed my life, she wrote, not just with the practical help, but by showing me that obstacles can be overcome with the right knowledge and support. Reading her words, I felt something shift within me. The pain of betrayal would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had become the catalyst for growth and purpose that extended beyond my own journey. Life rarely follows the path we expect. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most profound healing, not just for ourselves but for others we meet along the way. My parents took my college fund for my brother, but in doing so, they inadvertently set me on a course to discover strengths I never knew I possessed and a purpose larger than any they had envisioned for me. That perhaps is the ultimate form of outsmarting them all. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you rebuild afterward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming life's challenges. Share with someone who might need to hear that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of their story, but can be the beginning of something stronger and more authentic. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most difficult paths lead to the most beautiful destinations.